Hey folks, hope you've been doing well. Welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing why it is that people are having panic attacks after doing MDMA therapy. So I've got to say, this is not the video I was planning on making when I was kind of plotting my return from the hiatus I took here on the channel, but this is an incredibly important topic, and I think just such a useful example to start a discussion here on the channel about how to approach self-directed psychedelic therapy that I think really needs to be had. Okay, so we're going to talk about this today. And before we do, really quick, let me just introduce myself in case you've never seen my videos, never seen my channel, don't know anything about me. My name is Dave. I'm a coach. I'm a hypnotherapist. I've been taking psychedelics personally for over 30 years. I've been coaching and doing hypnosis and helping people for about over 10 years now. So if you're interested in psychedelic therapy or personal development work or any of this kind of stuff, spiritual growth, you're in the right place. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's content. So, like I said in the intro here, this is not the video I was planning on making when I was kind of plotting my return from my hiatus to start communicating with you guys here on the channel again. But this topic and this phenomenon of why people are having massive panic attacks, anxiety attacks, massive dysregulation after doing psychedelic therapy is so tightly at the heart of what I want to show you and why I want to show it to you that I would kind of be silly not to use this example. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at a post from Reddit that I saw recently that just kind of typifies and exemplifies what it is that I'm seeing across the internet and in real life with people who are doing self-directed psychedelic therapy and kind of ending up rocking the boat too much with themselves. And I want to discuss with you why this happens, give my thoughts on what's going on here, because I'm not so sure that people are going about this in the right way, that the approach that people are taking is healthy. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned that people kind of have the wrong idea about psychedelic therapy and about how to do this for oneself and are ending up causing themselves more harm than good. So this video is very much in the spirit of compassion and harm reduction and trying to make a difference, trying to help here. Okay, so I want to say before I go ahead and read the post here, my intention here is not to put this person on the spot or to judge or shame them or make them look bad in any way. I've redacted their username, even though I'm sure you could go look up the post if you really wanted to, but I've redacted their username just to give them a little bit of privacy here. And I want to just say, in case it's not clear, that I massively respect anyone who's doing self-healing work or doing healing work in general, whether it's with a therapist or a coach or an energy healer, whatever modality or approach works for you. If you've taken up the process of healing yourself and correcting whatever needs correcting from your past or in your own nervous system, in your own psychology, in your own emotional landscape, I respect that so much. Okay, I know it's deep, difficult, often challenging work, and I really just I admire anyone who does this, anyone who has the courage to do this, because our world and our society really does hinge on healthy, happy, good people functioning well, or enough of those kinds of people to not tip the whole balance towards, spiraling chaos and things going really sideways, right? Which debatably we're seeing more of that in the world right now. So anyone who's actively making an effort to improve themselves and center themselves and be a healthier person and therefore a healthier participant in society deserves our respect from my point of view. Okay, I'm waffling a little bit here because I'm mildly over-caffeinated and not used to being on camera, so it's been a minute, so bear with me here. But let's go ahead and I'm going to read this post with you. We'll do a little screenshot and we'll look at it, and then I will discuss my thoughts about why this happens. Because I think, if I can be frank here, there is a better way to go about doing psychedelic therapy where this kind of thing isn't a part of the process and you don't have to have these kind of snapback anxiety kind of results on the other side of a moment of breakthrough. So let's talk about what's happening here and why this is happening and what I think the solution is. Okay, so this is the post that I saw that I want to comment on really quick. So I'm just going to read this to you. You can read along or you can just listen, whatever works for you. But the post is titled Deep Anxiety After Session. And this was posted in on Reddit, obviously on our MDMA therapy, which is a sub that I'm pretty active in, amongst other places on Reddit. So this guy says, "Hi guys, I had an MDMA session 2 days ago in a therapeutic setting, dosing 120 plus 80 milligrams, which is pretty typical. They do about 120 as an initial dose and then an 80 milligram booster. I have thoughts on that. That'll be another video though. I've done it a few times before in the same setting. This time, I'm really having a hard time afterwards. To cut it short, I broke through some heavy defenses and I gained access to a very deep existential anxiety from when I was very small. I was able to stay with it and accept it. The day after the session, I was tired, vulnerable, but okay. Today, I woke up with a tremendous amount of anxiety to the point where everything feels unreal. I had a session with my therapist today. It was hard to focus, but I gained some insights. Nevertheless, the session, my anxiety only got, nevertheless, after the session, my anxiety only got worse. It is hard to stay with it, and I am wondering if it is okay to take a little bit a little bit of anxiety medication, or do you think this will stop the process? Thank you." Again, this is a really kind of typical, common type of post that I see or comment that I see from people. And so I wanted to just kind of share this with you. So just to summarize here, this person took MDMA at a dose they've taken before in a setting they're familiar with before, but they had a new experience on the MDMA, right? Where they were able to break through some heavy defenses and access a part of themselves that was carrying a lot of, in this case, anxiety, but I've heard other examples where it might be a lot of fear or a lot of grief, similar kinds of repressed, difficult emotions, right? And then this person kind of came down, had a kind of an okay day after, but then some intense anxiety starts to pop up. And even going to therapy and working with a therapist isn't resolving it. So, what's going on here? Why is this happening? And how do we not, is this avoidable? How do we not have this kind of bounce back after an MDMA therapy session? This is what I want to talk about with you. So, now that you've seen the post, let's talk about it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why this is happening. Again, I am making this video not to put this person on the spot or to put this person on blast or anything like that. I'm making this video because I see this kind of comment and this kind of thing happen over and over and over. And from my point of view, there's a lot at the surface. This seems to be the way to do it. You take the medicine and you go access the difficult experience and you process it, right? On the surface, that seems to make sense. But as we look more closely at this, there are actually a lot of dynamics here that are all kinds of unhealthy. Okay. And I want to point those out because there's a huge difference in terms of how we go about doing this and how that ends up, delivering the outcome that we want or that we don't want. So I'm presuming in this case that this person's, reason for doing MDMA therapy is some sort of healing and resolution of the past issues, past wounds, trauma healing, that kind of a thing. And so I'm assuming that this person's intention is to feel better. Now, there's a real question here about, do we need to feel worse before we feel better? And what does that mean exactly? Because you do hear therapists say this, particularly trauma therapists will say this a lot, like, as you heal, you will feel worse before you'll feel better. I think there's a truth to that, but I think that gets often misunderstood by people who are trying to internalize that information and heal themselves, and they don't know exactly what that means. And then that can be kind of a reason or an excuse to kind of write off these experiences as, I guess this is part of the process, part of how it should be. And in my experience, actually what's happening in a dynamic like this is that the person is essentially re-traumatizing themselves and slowing down the progress and actually making it harder, because a lot of times it takes, I've seen it take, from a few days to a few months for a person to bounce back from the kind of intense anxiety their system starts to feel after this experience and come back to baseline and come back to normal. So let's think about this for a moment. If you do MDMA to heal yourself and you access something that has been repressed, and then it causes you weeks to months to bounce back to your baseline, and in that weeks to months period, you are way more anxious than you ever were before, are you really progressing in the right direction? Are you really healing? And I would offer the idea that maybe you're not. Okay. So here's why this is happening. Let me explain why this is happening first. Then we'll look at it from like a different angle here, and then we'll kind of wrap the video here. So why is this happening? I think the real key to why this is happening has to do with the breaking through defenses part of the equation here, right? So this person is assuming, based, I'm guessing on, it's a common meme on Reddit, are, MDMA therapy or the MDMA solo book or other places. There's this idea out there. People get this also from Saj Razvi and PSIP. There's this idea out there that the way to heal trauma is to break through the dissociation, break through the defense barriers, and get to whatever that core experiential held content is, right? Now, if you study trauma therapy, like if you study somatic experiencing, for example, or if you study other, approaches to trauma therapy, this is generally ill-advised. Generally speaking, in the broader, milieu of trauma therapy, they would say you don't want to push too hard, too fast into the traumatic material, right? That essentially these defenses that we have, this dissociation we have, or these suppression mechanisms we have, they're there for a reason. They are part of your nervous system's intelligence. They are there to help you, to stabilize you, to protect you. And if you are breaking through that, you're ignoring all of that. You're dismissing all of that. You're going right into something that you're probably under-equipped to process still, even high in MDMA. And because of that, you've broken an internal boundary. You've broken an internal barrier. And you've essentially ignored part of your own self-care system, right? This is one of the major misunderstandings, is that people don't recognize, oddly enough, you would think it would be clearer, people don't recognize that dissociation, that suppression, that these internal boundaries that our system may have, this is part of self-care. This is part of self-love. This is part of self-stabilization and looking after ourselves. This is a protective part of you, not an ill-intentioned part of you, a very caring part of you, right? So when you break the defenses, when you break the boundaries, you are actively working to break this part of you that's trying to look out for you. Okay, so let's be clear about that. So part of why this is happening, from my point of view, is that we are essentially injuring or re-wounding this part of us that's trying to protect us on the medicine, from a well-intentioned place. We're trying to heal ourselves. We're trying to get at the thing that needs healing. We don't know a better way to do it. And so we're just kind of being maybe a little blunt and a little too forceful, a little too aggressive using the medicine. And it's easy to do on MDMA because it softens things and it makes you kind of overly optimistic, right? And because of that over optimism, it's easy to cross internal boundaries and just kind of ignore them or not care and go too deep too fast and end up breaking these self-protection mechanisms. And then, of course, your system has like a red alert moment afterwards and doesn't know what to do because it's kind of, something has been kind of violated there. Okay. So this is what's going on from my point of view. What's going on is that this breaking of the protection, the breaking of the dissociation, is fundamentally kind of, from the way I would frame it, a violent thing to do to ourselves, right? There are other ways we could frame this. We could say it's a disrespectful thing to do, or a poorly attuned thing to do. There are other ways we could describe this, but in a certain sense, there's kind of a violent spirit to ignoring boundaries or breaking boundaries intentionally, right? And so that's what's going on. And I think essentially this is a form of re-traumatizing ourselves. And for me, this is why it's an example of what not to do. Now, I want to explain to you a different angle of how I see this based on what I've learned here and what I think is a better way to go, and the results I've been seeing with clients. So to be clear, I have a bunch of clients who have done this type of approach with themselves before working with me and ended up kind of slowing down their own progress, ended up wounding themselves, dysregulating themselves more, traumatizing themselves more, getting more lost in the sauce, more overwhelmed, more triggered. and not knowing how to progress, how to heal. And of course, when you're highly dissociated, it's scary, it's confusing, it's overwhelming, it's frustrating, and it's understandable that you would feel that this dissociation is slowing down your ability to progress in life or do the things you want to do. But there's a better way. So let me explain to you how I see it and what I think that better way is, and then we'll wrap the video. So I want you to think about this with me for a moment from a relational frame. So let's imagine that these are two different people, right? That there is a person whose job is to guard or protect something vulnerable and precious, right? Their whole kind of major identity, their thing that they do is they're a protector person. They're there to kind of stand guard and look out for something that's really vulnerable or someone that's really vulnerable. Let's imagine that there's also another person who really wants to get at that vulnerable person or thing, and they end up drugging this protector to kind of slide past them, right? In an interaction like that, would you call that right relating? Is it right? Is it respectful? Is it win-win? Is it caring? Is it attuned? Is it patient? Is it compassionate for a person to drug another person, break past their boundaries, ignore their whole kind of focus and reason for being, and and kind of storm the castle, right? Is that right relating? From my point of view, that is very much not right relating, right? From my point of view, there's no negotiating happening. There's no attunement. There's no listening and mutual understanding there. There's no give and take there. There's no patience. There's no seeing what could be volunteered there. There's no connection, rapport, trust, safety being built between these two entities, right? Between these two people, right? There's just breaking of boundaries, ignoring will, right? Taking. And none of that is pretty obviously when we extrapolate that out to the world and to people relating, none of that is a really healthy, positive, constructive, safe, healing way of relating, right? I think that's pretty obvious. I hope I've made my point. If you think about it, a lot of people's wounds are rooted in the way we're treated. They're rooted in attachment wounds. They're rooted in the way that we've been treated maybe by our parents, by our teachers, by our peers, by the systems we grew up inside of, i.e. governmental systems or whatever, right? And there are dynamics there that are wounding to us, right? So a big one is having our boundaries ignored or broken, particularly by parents, right? Being treated dismissively is another major wounding thing. Being ignored, right? Being neglected. Being controlled, not given choice, not giving autonomy, not given the ability to be heard and consent or not consent to what we want, right? These are all things that, especially as young people, even in non-abusive situations, these dynamics occur and are very wounding. They're wounding to our sense of trust, to our sense of connection, to our sense of safety, right? So when we go ahead and we take MDMA and we break through our dissociation, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself here. When we break through our dissociation and we just kind of ignore all our internal boundaries and we go after whatever that content is, we're reenacting all of these wounding dynamics, probably from how we grew up. Feeling controlled, feeling like our will didn't matter, feeling like our boundaries weren't honored, etc., etc., etc. And this is why it's re-traumatizing, because we are, in a sense, often kind of reenacting the very thing that wounded us in the first place internally, right? And I would say that that's not really a productive, constructive way to heal. That we have to be mindful of these dynamics and get the approach and the relational piece right to send the correct signals of safety to allow our nervous system to volunteer what it's ready to process, right? What if that suppressed piece that this person kind of went for was something that their nervous system wouldn't be ready to process for another year or two, right? It's like the metaphor I use a lot with clients is, you can't like rip a flower open to force it to bloom faster and expect it to be beautiful and to smell good and to be the most exquisite expression of that flower. The only way that you get a flower to bloom is to give it the right things that it needs, the right soil, the right light, the right clean water, good nutrients, and a bit of time, right? And so I want you to think about this with your own healing process, that you can give yourself all of those things and it will kind of encourage the right optimal situation for your system to volunteer what it wants to volunteer and process. But when we're breaking through to force the system to process stuff, we're kind of ripping the flower open. And this is why we get panic attacks and anxiety afterwards, because your system is saying, hey, I was not ready at all for that, right? I don't know how to deal with that, right? And unless you're really good at holding a certain kind of space with yourself and processing through anxiety, you've really kind of set your system back rather than progressed it forward, right? So there's like a slow, smooth is fast kind of thing here, where the fast progress is through the smoothness. The smoothness is through creating the right conditions to allow the system to volunteer and process what it wants to volunteer. So this is exactly why I've been harping so much on right relating and on attachment theory. This is why I've made this secure self-relating course that is launching very soon. I literally made it based on reading accounts like this on Reddit over and over and over, right? Where people are trying to access things that they are not ready to, and totally blind to the relational approach that they're taking with themselves, right? Because we think like we can be more aggressive with ourselves or more forceful or harder, or that the way we treat ourselves doesn't matter and our nervous system isn't going to have a reaction to that, when that's so not the case. So I actually made this course very much for this exact kind of scenario, right? And this is the thing that people really don't see. This is the blind spot that people really don't get, that the relational approach itself is the healing input that makes it possible to access this stuff safely and smoothly, okay? Now, what I've seen over and over and over again, I told you earlier in the video here that I have a bunch of clients that I've worked with who have tried this approach that the post kind of embodies here, and had the same thing. They had panic attacks afterwards and dysregulation, and it slowed them down and they re-traumatize themselves. And once they learn how to securely self-relate and the right kind of internal way of approaching their own internal experience in these layers of dissociation and dysregulation and fight or flight and all that, when we know how to regulate that and approach that in the right way, what my clients tell me over and over and over is that their medicine sessions go smoothly, that there's no freak out afterwards. In fact, they feel deeply healed and they feel truly like something has changed after their medicine session experiences. They know exactly what to do when something starts to pop up on the medicine. They know where to go. They know how to approach it. And because of that, there's none of this kind of freak out in the nervous system afterwards that needs support and extra integration work and extra work on the back end, right? So what I'm finding is that when people get the relational piece right first and really understand what's happening and slow down and approach themselves in the right way, know how to approach their own nervous system in a healing way, what ends up happening is a smooth unfolding of the healing process and success. So this is what I want to show you, right? This is what I want to be going to be talking a lot about this on the channel here, especially in the near future, because this is what the course is all about. This is why the secure self-relating thing was created, what it's all about. It's about getting the relational approach right first, because that sends the safety signals, the precondition that allows the healing process to unfold in a much smoother way. So anyways, that's my message to you today. Hopefully this is food for thought. If you're someone who is using MDMA to heal yourself, you're doing your own self-directed MDMA therapy, please think about what I'm saying here. Please think about how this kind of storming the castle, breaking the boundaries thing is really ill-advised. It's really unwise, right? Even just from like a classic somatic experiencing approach, they talk about titrating doses of processing. You don't want to just like throw yourself in the deep end of the pool without knowing how to swim at all, and then expect your nervous system to be okay with that level of traumatic content. The way to do this is to touch into it a little bit and then dip out, then touch in a little bit, dip out. In other words, wade in from the shallow end of the pool into the deeper end and get used to more depth before you're way in over your head. So anyways, that's my message to you. Truly, again, coming from care, from compassion, from wanting to educate, because this is the classic mistake. And I swear to you, like, as you start to understand secure self-relating, not only does your psychedelic therapy and this process go more smoothly, you know how to heal yourself in any situation. You know what's missing and how to approach it in the right way. You know how to work with whatever needs to come up. And it really is the toolkit that gives you the ability, the empowerment, the skill to meet yourself properly and help yourself heal. So really excited to share that with you. Keep your eyes, here on the channel. There will be a link down below in the description so that if you want to go sign up for the waitlist, you can go sign up for the waitlist. The pre-sale goes on sale pretty soon here, and I'm really excited to share it with you. So anyways, much love. Hope you're well. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.